One of the more personally important subjects for me in discussions with machine elves is human diseases. Why do we and our loved ones get sick? I've talked to them many times about our health, and according to the entities, disease in our life has a purpose, and it's not always as bad and pointless as most of us consider it to be. It's important to understand why you go through illness and everything related to it, and I hope you can get a better understanding of life's cycle, and I would want this video to help you to deal with difficult moments in life when you or somebody close to you gets sick. I will start from explaining that the problem of our attitude towards a disease lies in its definition. The word disease means something that is the opposite of being at ease or being at peace, which implies that disease is an unnatural state for us, something that should not be a part of our existence. I was told that it's a very human way to look at life. Our understanding of a typical illness is that it's a troublesome inconvenience rather than an important red flag being a result of our harmful actions or a negative mindset. In this video, I'll show you how disease can be a great opportunity for learning and development. I'll use examples from my life to prove to you that the results of the disease can actually be a good thing in your life, and I'll talk about how machine elves explain it, and I'll tell you how all of this changed the direction of my life and how you can learn from going through difficult health problems in your life, both mental and physical. First, I want to ask you to support this channel financially. I found myself competing for views with big mainstream media outlets, and only you can help me survive these challenging times. There are many ways you can give, and they're all listed on the screen now with links in the video description. It is easy to do it, and if you can do it, I want you to know that it's a big thing that makes you an important contributor to 434. Thank you for caring about me and these messages. As you might have heard before, I have a compromised immune system, and I think it all goes back to my childhood when I was very sick for a long time with many unusual diseases. It resulted in me having virtually no biological defense mechanism, and for this reason, to this day, I cannot function like most people do. I'm not able to drink regular amounts of alcohol or eat sugar or junk food normally, as it immediately causes sickness. I struggled with this for the first 25 years of my life until I learned how to turn this weakness into my strength. I quickly realized that I need to lead a very healthy lifestyle for me to stay away from recurring health issues. I turned myself into a guinea pig to learn the language that my body uses to communicate with me, and I eventually developed very useful universal knowledge about the human organism as a result of this. As some of you know, I've written a book describing the optimal human nutrition based on me observing my weak immune system and my body's reactions to everything toxic in our diet and our environment. This knowledge allowed and will allow a big number of people to improve their health. Whether I like it or not, I'm forced to live a healthy life, and all of these diseases probably allowed me to have a longer lifespan. It's also the reason why I need very small amounts of any stimulants and psychoactive substances. I believe that's why I have a fully blown trip on less than 1 gram of magic mushrooms. This quest for health also allowed me to discover the truth about the corrupt nature of our food and medical industries, and it allowed me to function better in the world that is trying to profit from our misery. This is how I learned that your body is the best doctor, and in most cases, all you need to do is to let it heal itself. The bottom line is, my childhood sickness allowed for me and others to improve their lives. It was also during one of those rare diseases that I experienced something similar to a first psychedelic experience. During one of those extended periods of high fever, I started hallucinating, and I traveled into what might be a different dimension filled with structures resembling giant exploding salt shakers. I remember this vision vividly because it was the moment when for the first time I experienced emotional hallucinations and perceived imaginary objects being simultaneously close and far, which was very unusual for someone who's only 5 years old. This disease and its complications allowed me to discover that there's a different side of reality, and it also introduced a concept of other dimensions into my life. I learned about the fragile and unstable nature of our existence here based on the limited sensual inputs. It's not natural for a child to experience psychedelic states, and I remember that it completely changed my view of this reality. I considered that to be a very important initiation into my psychedelic experiences 30 years later. A disease that had the biggest impact on my life was actually me developing a severe case of Tourette syndrome when my mom left. I was about 11 years old, and it lasted until I was 17. Tourette syndrome is a neurological disorder that is characterized by uncontrollable vocal and facial tics, muscle spasm, shaking, and other involuntary motor reactions. For me, it was 6 years of a very difficult existence, and it was so traumatic that even now I have a hard time talking about this. It was filled with ridicule, bullying, and constant humiliation, as people with this disorder are very often dismissed with a simple label of a freak. As difficult and debilitating as this disease was for a child of my age, it shaped my personality in a positive way, and it allowed me to learn a few very important things about life and humans. First of them was learning not to worry about people's opinion and to never pay attention to what somebody else thinks of you. With a condition like that, you also learn quickly how to get used to being rejected by people around you for something that is not your fault. You get to discover who your real friends are, and then you learn the truth about humans, their ignorance, disrespect, and prejudices. With all of this, you have a chance to discover yourself, and you learn how to cope with living in mental isolation. I believe that having this disorder directly contributed towards me starting 434 without ever worrying what people might think about me talking to alien entities. Many of you congratulate me on having the courage to make these videos, and I'm asked by people very often how I'm not afraid. That's how. Those 6 difficult years back in the 90s allowed me to grow thick skin, protecting me from worthless opinions of disrespectful and ignorant people. This is the reason why I'm always drawn to people with disabilities and those who need help. I know their pain. Of course, when I started communicating with machine elves, that was one of the first things that I asked them about, and they explained to me that in my case, this was an exercise in learning how to relax, as relaxation turns out to be one of the most important tools in getting this disease under control. They also explained that this is all a part of my journey. They said, "We had to add some obstacles and problems into your life that push people away from you so that you can concentrate on your path rather than interaction with people. That's not your role here. You need to do your job." So if you ever go through something similar in life, remember there might be a planned metaphysical reason for your problems. If you have watched my previous video about lessons, you'll know about the other serious condition that had a huge impact on my life. In 2004, I had a serious eye inflammation called iritis, leading to me almost losing eyesight in one of my eyes. It took weeks of heavy steroid treatment to get things back under control, and my eye was saved at the last moment. It was probably the most dangerous health problem I've ever experienced. It turned out to be a result of prolonged stress and me acidifying my body with huge doses of protein foods during my intense workout period. This incident allowed me to realize how fragile we are. I know we hear this a lot, but for me that was the awakening that allowed me to learn that we're not immortal beings made of reinforced concrete. It was the reason why I moved to England. I described it in detail in my previous video, but that was the last straw in the series of life complications that forced me to find a way to heal after a difficult childhood and to leave everything and everyone behind. It turned into an amazing opportunity not only to deal with all my personal issues and childhood trauma, but it also allowed me to create for myself an environment in which I was able to deal with all my important issues, and it eventually allowed me to develop 434. I think this might have been one of the most significant moments that led to you listening to me now, and is definitely on the list of the most important things that ever happened to me. Of course, machine elves confirm many times that everything that happens is planned, that everything is a lesson and everything happens for a reason. And this particular health issue is definitely the best proof for that. I want you to keep that in mind when you're going through some serious health problems. Speaking chronologically, the next important experience with human diseases was one of my close family members being diagnosed with cancer at the same time as I started recording 434 videos in 2018. I know that many of 434 viewers who are looking for answers stumble upon this channel, and I get a lot of messages from people who are in the same situation, battling cancer themselves or having a loved one with this condition. To those of you who have never been through this, you need to know that it's as unexpected as it is devastating to everybody involved in it. Everything in your life gets turned upside down. It's like pressing a giant stop button. Although this particular situation had a happy ending, machine elves gave me some very important information about that situation. They said that this disease was an important message highlighting the defining elements of life, birth and death of a human. They said that this was for all of us to wake up and realize what is important by getting closer to each other and understanding what life's about. They wanted me to know that we all need to stick to the baseline, the common denominator in form of health balance, so that we always have healthy foundations in life. They said that it was a wake-up call, a point of reference for what life is made of. It was for all of us to understand and see the cycle of life. I must admit that although my health was not affected in this case, it was probably one of the most difficult lessons in my life. And it's a shame that it takes a serious, potentially terminal illness to realize what's important in life. To love people as much as we can before they go away. The last serious physical condition I got myself into was me ending up in hospital in January 2019 when me and my dad got infected by a strange virus with symptoms resembling what we're dealing with right now globally. I couldn't breathe and I couldn't stop coughing, and after 2 weeks of that, one night I started losing consciousness and I ended up in an emergency room for the first time in my life. It seemed like a serious situation, and I must admit that it got me scared as I had to spend several weeks in bed. I didn't really make much of it back then, but a few months later during one of my trips, Machine Elves told me this: "You do not know this yet, but you ending up in the emergency room will be a defining moment in your life. It seems like not much, but it will be a very important moment." As always, they were right. Although I quickly got back into my usual routine and my normal life, I realized that I switched from taking care of myself occasionally to a permanently new lifestyle where I'm making sure that my immune system is strong enough to defend myself against all types of diseases. Because this was the first time where I had to call for an ambulance, it was the beginning of me realizing that I'm no longer a teenager and that I need to take very good care of my body if I want to continue being on my mission in this reality. Now I find myself going back to that moment very often and using it as a point of reference for a lot of things that happen in my life, and it turns out that the entities were right. It was a pivotal moment of my life. If you ever find yourself in a situation like this, look for the silver lining and be prepared to have your life values redefined. This moment might be the energy's way of telling you it's time to start a new chapter in your journey. Of course, when talking about diseases, we should also discuss the issue of mental health, as this is something that most of us struggle with more and more these days. I made a video called Your Insanity Explained, and in that video I explain extensively the implications of living in a dysfunctional society. I suggest you watch it to learn about the implications of having to adjust mentally to a social structure made of hostile quote-mark humans. I also want to mention the moment I discovered the limits of my sanity in 2015 when I took a heroic dose of magic mushrooms. That was the moment I came to realization that our sanity is very fragile and made of finely tuned equilibrium of sensual perception. It only took a few of my senses to get distorted for me to start losing my mind. I talk more about this in the Insanity video. Not long ago, I began noticing a new form of what in psychiatric terms could be simply labeled as mental disease. Recently, I started having mild panic attacks and a mild psychosis as a result of me being in a human body and in this reality. The older and more conscious I get, the more I start feeling trapped inside of this existence, and although it offers me a lot of wonderful lessons and experiences, I'm starting to get worried about this turning into a fully blown mental issue when I get older and when I lose the majority of my mental defense mechanisms. Although I do not exhibit any other symptoms, it is on my mind a lot, and I want you to be aware of this when experimenting with psychoactive substances. That's not how you want to discover your mental problems, and that's very often the case. This is also closely related to developing psychological problems as a result of this life being simply too much for some of us. I think it's normal that some of you feel like they're facing life events that are considered to be too difficult to handle on your own. Once you start seeing this becoming a permanent occurrence, you should start concentrating on your spiritual side of life, and you should start paying more attention to what's happening inside of you rather than what or who you're surrounded by. A moment like this should highlight the importance of taking care of your psyche, and it should teach you a lot about the limits of your mental and physical resilience to stressful situations. Remember that being honest with yourself and others can protect you against many mental and physical diseases. We're only as sick as our secrets. Remember that healing your body starts from healing your mind, as the human mind today is so troubled that it causes most of the physical symptoms. Suffering can be a creation of your mind, and disease, both physical and mental, could be a natural reaction to an adaptation effort to an unnatural environment. Whether toxic food or toxic relationships or toxic society, if you're trying to force yourself to accept them, it might result in a lot of suffering and illness. In many cases, sickness is a result of making mistakes and leaving your path. This is how the energy is trying to show us the right direction. Machine Elves told me, let your body heal through love and meditation. Your medicine is to be slow, relaxed, and positive. Slow down, let it heal. Become the shield and protect yourself from anything negative. Remember also that you'll never learn to appreciate happiness without experiencing suffering, and you'll never learn to appreciate health without experiencing disease. Disease and suffering are a normal part of life. It's not a sign of pathology. Keep in mind that the disease is very often held in the body by our thoughts and by observation, and it's fueled by the attention and the energy we give to it. If you ever have to struggle with the pain of experiencing a disease, remember that those who acknowledge the existence of the energy have only to account for the existence of unjust suffering. But those who don't want to know about the existence of the divine forces will have to account for everything else in life. Love, 434. My hope is that this video helps you to deal with the situation we're in globally at the moment, and that it explains the metaphysical reasons behind all of this. Thank you for watching, and if you can, please support 434 financially. Subscribe, like, and share this video. Visit the websites of the artist and the musician I featured in this video. Leave your email address at news.b434.com to be up to date with the latest 434 information. Remember about b434.com and join 434's social media on YouTube, Facebook, BitChute, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and VK. Talk to each other on Telegram, Reddit, and Discord. All links in the video description.